Okay, so before I expressed of the position of how our federal and state government are having a huge problem between of how the medical marijuana and the recreational use is being distributed upon the legalized states. And just try to neglect about the previous naive statement I made before, because this position speech should enlighten on how the other side of the grass is always greener. The purpose of this is the federal government gave us its viewpoints upon how the argument in the state government position on how the laws and regulations of medical marijuana should be used and distributed in the states. And this should explain the opposing side of the state upon the state government's viewpoint on the issue and how their laws are justified. Basically, it's going to be breaking down to 3 points, my main point and my two subclaims, followed by my conclusion. The first main point I'm going to get into is how I should explain the state government laws and procedures of how they use and distribute medical marijuana throughout the legalized areas and how it's justified. The subpoints I'm going to make to support this is how the state government stands versus the federal government and how the state government laws are better and exceed the judicial reach of the federal government. Second main point of the subclaim will be the federal government and how less of their standards upon the government, how their policies or proposed policies won't work or be accepted from the state government, given how their laws are how their laws are protected. Okay, now that all that is out of the way, let's see how the state government's medical marijuana use laws are better than the policies those are being offered by the federal government. Well, first of all, the state government laws are over the Justice Department and federal proposed policies. Reason being is because the state government upon Colorado has the 64th Amendment that they passed statewide, which supports how the state will be justified in given pretty much amenities and the uh, protective rights, protective rights of how the state medical marijuana use is distributed. The laws that protect the state government against the federal government, like I said, are the 64th Amendment, which basically states that the free recreational use of medical marijuana or marijuana in these states, there are some few restrictions upon like how much a person can legally have upon them at one time, and also they have to have justified proof of the medical marijuana card that they'll be distributed once they try to go to a local pharmacy and try to purchase this. Um, this basically should suggest how the state um, is pretty much justified, and the federal government is trying to make a big deal of something that isn't. And the standard viewpoints of the state are a little bit better on the medical marijuana, given that they have the justified proof and law proof upon this. The state clearly has the upper hand in the argument of recreational medical marijuana use, but let's see how the two sides will probably differ. Okay, the federal government's focus on distribution of marijuana in legal states and the federal laws is basically upon the fact that in 1937 the federal government placed a law upon um, how not medical marijuana, but marijuana legally distributed in states, saying that as long as basically the federal government is trying to get their money, because as long as they have a standard procedure of how they distribute it and the taxes are taken um, out of those purchases, then the federal government will be okay. But when you go from California back in 1996, that was one of the main states that passed marijuana as a recreational use, to Colorado and Washington about a year ago, to now we have 18 states. So basically, 18 plus the two or three states we have, 21 legalized states out of 50. The federal government is getting kind of concerned because now that they can't keep a taxation upon uh, the use of marijuana in the United States, it's starting to become a problem because obviously the upper heads of the federal government upon the state government aren't getting their money. And the state versus federal government, another main argument they have against each other is that the state, they have the right to do what they want to do as far as recreational use in these states, legalized states, because it's legalized and it's protected by the law. The federal government is just trying to stick their hands in something that really has no business for them to really even be a part of. So for the federal government really could care less about how the state carry out their marijuana laws as long as the distribution upon minors is taken care of, the taxation and economic issues are taken care of, and everybody will be along happy with this. Um, the federal government, the money, like I said before, the proceeds of economic growth in states with legalized marijuana. When before, where you had I think it was a 22% chance or not 22% chance, a 22% increase from the 21 states that become legalized with marijuana, and the government can't keep control of that money federally, is because obviously the federal laws against marijuana is that a bank cannot accept, uh, aka dirty money, because that's of marijuana use, and the federal government's trying to stay squeaky clean with their laws. And so they figure that the recreational medical marijuana use and the people, the civilians who have the medical rights to be justified to have this marijuana isn't, you know, isn't quite fitting the standards of the federal government. And the states that have legalized marijuana are protected under the 64th Amendment. So really, it's hard to, it's hard to go against something that's already been justified and legalized at a law. If you can't even do something that's protected by law, then I could obviously see how a person from Washington or Colorado or California, other 18 states that had this legalized, feel like this is a big misunderstanding, or probably some people feel a little bit more stronger than that of how the federal government is trying to go about trying to, how I want to say, uh, just control basically of how this is being about. So basically, the state government is justified through the 64th Amendment and has more prestige over the Justice Department and its officials and the federal laws restrictions against them. So if I was a civilian of one of these states, I wouldn't stop doing anything I was doing or told either by the federal government if I'm protected by my state law, which obviously has its own procedures and restrictions and laws given out. So, so basically, the federal government is wasting a big bunch of people's times, taxpayers' times, because the state law obviously has the upper hand in this whole situation right now going on in Congress. So, and that's where I stand upon this whole issue right now. Thank you.